When I was a kid, the attic scared me way more than the basement ever did. I could never really explain why. Most people are creeped out by basements, but there was something about our attic that always made my stomach twist. Part of it was probably the way it was built. It wasn't the cramped little crawl space you're probably picturing. Our attic was surprisingly big. You could stand up straight almost anywhere without having to crouch. You'd think that meant we used it all the time, like an extra room or something, but we didn't. My parents treated it like a glorified storage area. Old furniture, boxes of random junk, holiday decorations, everything got tossed up there and forgotten. Looking back now, I realize they avoided it as much as possible. Another strange thing about the attic was the layout. It was broken up by these odd wooden beams and little changes in the floor height. The beams were uneven, thick in some places and thin in others, and they seemed to appear randomly. The whole place felt like a maze. No matter where you stood, you could never see the entire attic at once. Something was always blocking your view. The floor was even worse. It dipped and slanted in weird places, and if you weren't careful, you could easily trip. My dad used to joke that one day someone would slip between the joists, crash through the insulation, and punch a hole straight through the ceiling below. So yeah, as a kid, that place terrified me. What scared me most was not being able to see everything at once. Every time I went up there, I had this horrible feeling that someone might be standing just behind one of those beams, watching me. For a long time, nothing actually happened up there. It was just a creepy place in the house. Then one morning, I woke up and noticed something weird. The bottoms of my feet were filthy. Gray dust covered them, and there was grit stuck between my toes like I'd been walking around on a dirty floor all night. I sat on the edge of my bed staring at them, trying to figure out how that could have happened. I hadn't gone outside. I hadn't gotten out of bed as far as I remembered, but I was a kid, so I didn't think too hard about it. I just washed my feet in the bathtub and went to school. A few days later, something stranger happened. I walked into my room after school and saw a small cardboard box sitting on my desk. I recognized it immediately. It was one of those boxes my parents kept in the attic, filled with old family photographs. I had no memory of bringing it downstairs. When I asked my mom about it, she just assumed I'd been rummaging through the attic and forgot to put it back. I told her I hadn't been up there, but she just shrugged and carried the box back upstairs. A couple days later, it happened again. This time it was an old lamp. It was this ugly brass lamp I vaguely remembered seeing in the attic years earlier, and there it was, sitting on my desk like it had always belonged there. That's when the pieces started coming together. The dirty feet, the box of photos, the lamp. I wasn't just sleepwalking. I was sleepwalking to the attic. When I told my parents, they reacted exactly the way parents usually do. They said sleepwalking was normal. Lots of kids did it. I'd probably grow out of it. They didn't seem worried at all, but I was. After that, bedtime became something I dreaded. I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, fighting sleep for as long as I could because I didn't know where I'd wake up. Most mornings my feet were clean, but every once in a while, I'd wake up and see that gray dust again. Those were the bad mornings. The thought that I was wandering around that attic maze in the middle of the night, completely unconscious, scared me more than anything. Then one night something happened that I'll never forget. I woke up. At first I thought it was morning, but the room was completely dark. Then I realized something even worse. I wasn't in my bed. I wasn't even lying down. I was standing. For a few seconds, my brain couldn't process what was happening. My heart started pounding as I slowly realized where I was. I was in the attic. It was pitch black. No light from the house below. No moonlight. Nothing. I couldn't see the beams. I couldn't see the boxes. I couldn't even see my own hands. Just complete darkness. I was so scared I couldn't move. I stood there frozen, trying to remember the layout of the attic from memory. I knew the ladder hatch was somewhere, but I had no idea which direction I was facing. Eventually, I forced myself to move. I shuffled my feet slowly, terrified I'd trip or step into a gap in the floor. Tears started running down my face, but I didn't dare make a sound. For some reason, I was convinced that if I made noise, something would hear me. And then I heard it. A soft thud behind me. It sounded exactly like someone shifting their weight on a wooden floor. I froze. A few seconds later, it happened again, but this time it came from a different spot. At that moment, I knew, at least in my terrified kid mind, that I wasn't alone up there. Something else was in the attic with me. I started moving faster, feeling my way through the darkness. I bumped into a beam, scraped my arm, nearly tripped over something, but I kept going. Eventually, my hands brushed against the wooden frame of the attic hatch. I had never been so relieved in my life. I practically fell down the ladder and ran straight into my parents' room, crying uncontrollably. I told them everything. How I'd woken up in the attic. How I had to find my way back in the dark. How I heard footsteps behind me. I was convinced someone was up there, but they didn't react the way I expected. My mom hugged me and told me it was just sleepwalking. My dad said he could put a lock on the attic hatch if it made me feel safer. I begged him to at least check the attic. Finally, he agreed. I watched him climb up the ladder, half convinced something horrible was about to happen. But less than 2 minutes later, he came back down. He said there was nothing up there. After that, the sleepwalking stopped. Just like that. To this day, I still don't know what to believe. Maybe it really was sleepwalking. Maybe my brain was playing tricks on me. But I still remember those sounds. And I still remember the feeling that something else was standing somewhere in that dark attic, watching me. Years later, another strange thing happened connected to an attic, though this time it was in a different house. I was about 15. My family lived in an old house that had been passed down through generations. My dad grew up there, and his parents before him. Like most houses, it had an attic that nobody really used except to store things. Around Christmas one year, my dad told me I was finally old enough to grab the decorations myself. He explained which boxes to look for, something about the lights being in a separate container near the back wall. But honestly, I wasn't really listening. I climbed up the ladder, pulled the chain to turn on the attic light, and started digging through boxes. After about 20 minutes, the attic looked like a tornado had passed through it. But I eventually found the Christmas decorations. When I went back up one last time to check for anything else, I noticed something strange in the far corner. A black box. It wasn't cardboard like everything else. It looked sturdier, almost like a document storage box. Curiosity got the better of me, so I opened it. Inside were stacks and stacks of papers, notebooks, loose pages, hand-drawn maps, even sheets of music. Every single page was covered in handwriting. At first, it looked like some kind of diary. The earliest pages talked about weather, chores, daily life. But as I kept reading, things started getting strange. The writer became obsessed with the attic. They kept measuring it. Over and over, they wrote down the dimensions of the attic and compared them to the size of the house below. According to their notes, the attic was smaller than it should have been. There was empty space somewhere behind one wall. The entries became frantic after that. They wrote about hearing scratching sounds behind the wall, breathing, tapping. Some entries even had timestamps. 2:14 a.m. scratching for 3 minutes. By the final pages, the writing had completely fallen apart. There were no sentences anymore, just rows and rows of tally marks. When I finished reading everything, my hands were shaking. I slowly looked up at the wall the writer had been obsessing over, and I saw the marks. Small cracks and dents exactly where the pages described. When my dad came upstairs and saw everything, he decided to tear that wall down. And when he did, there really was a hidden space behind it, several feet deep, running the entire length of the wall. But the strangest part was that every inch of that hidden room was covered in strange black markings and symbols. None of it looked like writing, and there was no other way into that space. No door, no opening, nothing. To this day, neither of us has ever figured out how those markings got there.